Hello, YouTube. This is Mahadeva, the OG Thunder Wizard. My apologies for not showing up yesterday. I had every intention of doing a live stream yesterday, but I ate some really bad chicken a couple nights ago, so I was out of commission yesterday. And I'm grateful that I'm feeling much better today. All right. So, I'm always looking for, I want to get to the source of everything. I've always been like this. This is one of the reasons why I ended up leaving religion. It wasn't because I didn't believe. I believed 100% in the religious path I was following. But I always questioned everything. And if you question things enough, if it's if it's bogus, it eventually starts to fall apart. So the more questions you ask, the deeper you get to the truth of things. And I'm like that still. These days, what I look for is trying to find the answer to being able to live 100% in the reality that I choose to live in, that brings me the greatest joy, happiness, and satisfaction. As it turns out, what I've been talking about having to do with living your soul desire, which is what I call it. I've been saying that's the most important thing, to know what your soul wants and to live from there. And I may have shared with you about somebody that I had heard of. I don't remember how. I don't know if somebody might have sent me a link. I can't remember. I almost never respond to those links, but somebody sent me a link to go check out something, and I did. And it was having to do with a Himalayan saint who no longer is living, at least in a human body. And that guy was saying the same thing. This was a guy who, I guess he died, he was in his 90s, but he looked like he was 35. And this was back in the 70s, and there was, you can find him. There's, if I can remember his name, I'll tell you his name. Tatwale Baba, that's his name. Yeah, I'll write it down for you. Why not? Tatwale, I'm pretty sure that's how it's pronounced. Tatwale Baba. And he says the same thing I've been saying, which is, for him, of course, he's talking in the realm of Vedic Hindu mysticism, and he's talking about achieving moksha or enlightenment. And what he kept repeating over and over again is that when you get to what he calls the self, when you get to the self, what you find is bliss and happiness and joy. And he says, when you find that, you don't need anything else. You don't need a guru. You don't need rituals. You don't need any of that other stuff, because you have realized, which is a whole different way of looking at things as opposed to achieving enlightenment. Working towards achieving enlightenment. It's you just realize. You realize your true essence, and when you have that, then that goes with you everywhere. And so what I would call that is that he's found his soul desire. You can't escape desire. You can't escape it. So the thing to do is to follow the desires that your soul brings with you into this life. And as I've said before, it is my belief that there are two main reasons. The more that you simplify things, the easier things get. When somebody says, it's complicated, it's usually never all that complicated. They're complicating it within themselves because they're not getting honest about what they want. And so they're playing games with themselves, or they're hiding with themselves, or they're trying to negotiate with either themselves or real or imagined entities in the universe. But I like to make things very simple. So there's two reasons that we come here. First one is that we come to live the desire of our souls. Our soul comes into this manifestation with an idea of what it wants to achieve and what it wants to experience. It comes with a desire. So anybody who thinks that being spiritual is to be without desire is actually working against themselves. I'm not going to name any names, but there's people that have been around in the New Age community for a while who are seen as these, these masters of whatever. And when I hear them talk about, achieving this state of emptiness, what I hear is denial. And the reason why they're so popular is because people, for the most part, want to escape their painful feelings. And there's nothing more painful than not having your desires fulfilled, your soul desire especially. Not fulfilling your soul desire is the most miserable thing that you can experience. And so when people are I'm going to say unconscious, and I don't mean that as a judgment, it's just a fact. When people are not conscious of what their soul wants, and they are living their lives in order to please God, society, church, parents, siblings, spouse, friends. When people live to please other people, they are in direct conflict with their soul. And that is a very, very painful place to be. And you end up denying the validity and the power of your own eternal self in exchange for other people. Now, the tough part is you don't realize you're doing it. I was a born-again Christian, and so, of course, I spent a lot of time trying to please God, living up to God, finding what God's will for me was. It was blasphemy to say, what is it that I want for myself? I want to live and bring myself glory and happiness and joy. That you can't do that in religion. You have to submit yourself to the will of God. And that is a very painful place to be, because it means that you mean nothing, that you're worthless. So the two things that we come to do, first is to follow the desire of our soul, and the second is to overcome the challenges that arise when we follow our soul desire. So let me once again address the misconception, because I get asked this question a lot. Well, if I'm following my soul desire, shouldn't it be easy? Now I know what my soul wants. Why is it so hard? Why are there so many challenges? Why isn't it easy for me to accomplish? Well, because the other reason your soul came here was to grow. And so your karmic issues from past life, because in previous lives you've lived to please other people. And what ends up happening is if you die and you haven't completely fulfilled your own soul desire, you come into another life with sort of, with a karma. And that karma will influence you to face how you have denied yourself and your essence in other lifetimes. So let's say in a previous lifetime you, I'm trying to think of a good example, but anyway, I'm too tired, so I'm not gonna try and work on it. But whatever it is that you avoid in this lifetime, in terms of you following your soul desire. So the challenge comes, you follow your soul desire. And then what ends up happening is that you manifest challenges. So in the Hindu tradition, they'll call it samskaras. And the way to look at it is that samskaras are like these programs. They're like stuck in your aura. And when you either get to a certain place in your life, you've got this karmic date set up in your life, on such and such date, this samskara is going to be released. It means that you'll have to face an issue that you have avoided or tried to avoid in a previous lifetime. So if your issue was, I guess I can use my life as an example. Um, my Ketu, which is the south node of the moon in Vedic astrology, it is sitting in my fifth house, which is the house of performance, arts, music, theater, those kinds of things. Also things like children. And as I've said before in a previous video, wherever K2 sits, that will drain you of your life force. But I obviously had some ego attachment to the idea of being a performer and being an actor and being famous and all that. And so, as many of you may know, I was an actor for many years. I founded a co-founded a theater company in Hollywood, California, and did smidgen of TV and film and blah, blah, blah. And obviously I never made it. But there was still some ego attachment there. So one of the lessons that I have had to face when I look at what it is that I really want is to give up the idea of, getting fame or notoriety, because I still think this is my ego, I'm just being straight with you. I think I'm the best actor that's ever lived. In terms of, I just think, I think the world is at a loss for not seeing me in, films and things like that. And I'm just being honest with you, that's my ego. You can think about that however way you want, and I'm okay with that. But obviously that was something that I brought with me. And so K2 says, no, we've done this before. You've had the fame, you've had all that stuff. I've obviously been a musician in previous lifetimes and actor and writer and all that other stuff in previous lifetimes. Because I do it really easily. It's just, it doesn't, I can pick up musical instruments like that. And then I don't care about it. So obviously I did that. But that has been an issue for me, especially when I was in my 20s and early 30s. It was a real issue. It was really challenging for me. And there has come a time when I started to really think about it, and I said, this really doesn't make me happy. It's just a lot of work, and it drains me, and there's no money in it, and what am I doing this for? But I had also an ego attachment around not revealing to people that I was a shaman. So that whole time that I was acting, I was denying to myself what my soul wanted to do, and I did it in secret. I wouldn't let anybody know, and I hid it from my family, and I would poo-poo it and downplay it and all that. So I had to let go of that. So there was a lot of attachment to the idea of being accepted and being loved in that way for me, and I had to let go of that. I'm really glad that I never had kids, because the kids would have killed me. I've seen people that have similar scenario as I do who didn't want kids and had kids for other people, and it literally killed them. They got sick and died. So I really now listen to that. What I think about now is I don't think about what I have an ego attachment to. I think about where I'm supposed to go and what I want out of life. So anyway, I'm babbling on and on. My point is that you have two reasons that you come here. Number one, you have come here because your soul has a desire that it wants to fulfill. That desire is a command. It is not optional. And a lot of people, when I talk about living your soul's dream, they think that I'm talking about some kind of motivational speaker book that you get when you get out of college. What is it that you want to do? What's your dream? Go accomplish your dream. And there's this unconscious assumption that it's optional. We can choose to do that or not, or we can go and become like, a worthwhile citizen and go, do something of value and have a real job and all that kind of stuff. Sorry, I got distracted. So, in case you're new to this channel, this is a question and answer. So what I prefer people do on this is they ask me an honest question, hopefully about what I'm talking about and or what I've already shared in previous videos. But if you have an honest question, I'll take it. I prefer that over comments and that sort of thing. So if you do have a question, do me a favor, write the word question in all caps and then just type in normal case your question with a verb and a subject and an object and good grammar and punctuation so I can understand it. And when we get to that, I'll answer it for you. All right, so the more that I think about this issue of the two things that we're here to do, to follow your soul desire, and then when you follow your soul desire, you must then deal with the challenges that arise, and the challenges will arise. So as I said earlier, the sort of superficial, immature idea is, well, if I figure out what my soul desire is and I go do it, it'll all be easy, right? Because it's sort of like I'm doing God's will. And there's a truth to that, except for the fact that you have unresolved attachments to the world, which are other people. The world is other people. Having other people love you and accept you and approve of you. And I'm not talking about being in love. True love is a different thing. Like when you're really, truly in love with somebody, that's two people that are working together to help achieve their own desires, and they're holding each other's hand while each of them fulfills their own desires. And you're holding the hand of the other person who has to face themselves. That's really like the commitment of marriage is, I'm going to hold your hand while you face yourself, and I'll be there for you while you go through that challenge. All right, so I think this has everything to do with any aspect of life. I don't care if it's wealth, if it's happiness, if it's love, if it's success, if it's, did I say health already? Because I've seen this more and more. The more that I look at it, because now that I've been around for a while, I've seen a lot of people come and go. And I've seen a lot of people get sick, and I've seen a lot of people pass away. And many of these people I've known for many, many years, and I get to watch them throughout their life. And I've shared this before, but people that I've grown up with who were extremely unhappy and extremely destructive people, I kept my eye on them because I wanted to make sure that I didn't end up like them. And so one of the ways that I did it is I would do the opposite. So in terms of like my brother, for example, whenever I am stuck and I know that I'm afraid about something in my life, I will simply ask my brother in my head, what would you do? And I listen to what I know he would say. And then I do the exact opposite of that. And it's usually very frightening and challenging. And so when it comes to health, I believe that there is one thing which you can do which will bring you perfect health if you are destined for it. And I think most of us are. I think there's only maybe a few people who maybe have some major karmic issues, like they're born with one leg or, whatever like that, or born with some congenital defect. And that is obviously something they have to work through. Stephen Hawking is a good example of that. He obviously, he had a congenital illness that eventually you saw what happened. Towards the end, he couldn't do anything. He couldn't speak. He couldn't move. And but he had his mind. And from what I could tell, he seemed, obviously, living in that body had to have been a tremendous challenge. But he seemed to really enjoy his work, and he seemed to really enjoy people. And he seemed like a happy person to me, a fulfilled person. And I think it's because he was living his soul desire. So that would be one example of, that's not something you can wish away. But for a lot of people who end up getting diseases that, aren't, like cancer, diabetes, type 2 diabetes, fibromyalgia, I could go on and on and on, all kinds of illnesses. Even ones like, I suffered from this, tendonitis. Really bad I had tendonitis so bad I couldn't do anything. I wouldn't have been able to pick up this bottle of kombucha. it would have been too painful for me. And that was a long time ago. And it was because I wasn't happy. So I really believe that by following our true soul desire, we get everything. But you have to be willing. What people minimize is how challenging it is when you go after your soul desire. And I've worked with a ton of people, some of them who've made a lot of huge success in their life because they've followed my instructions to the letter consistently. And if they do that, I always see them succeeding. And then there are some that have gotten some success. They start to really make some success, and it gets really challenging for them because they have a lot of childhood and karmic issues, which means that when you go after your soul desire, those childhood and karmic issues come up to try and stop you. And I've watched them choose destructive relationships over following their soul. And there's nothing I can do about that. That's a decision they have to make. So everybody's my teacher, and I listen to everybody that I can, and I watch everybody that I can, because I want to have perfect health, perfect fulfillment, perfect success, perfect happiness. I haven't achieved perfection yet, and that's because if I do, I'll be like that guy, at 94 who looked like he was 35, and when he finally achieved the connection to his soul at that level, he just, there's no longer your spirit just can't stay in the human body any longer. It has to go. So I'm happy to take any questions. I know it's like in the middle of the night for everybody, probably. It looks like there's only 17 people on. If you have a question, please write the word question. Before I go any further, let me just say that if this channel is important to you, then I invite you to support the channel. The way to do that, of course, is to watch the videos for yourself. Let me just get this out of the way. For yourself, put the time and effort to watch the videos. Watch the free videos on this channel, and binge watch what's on the free channel, and apply it. If there are exercises and meditations, do them. Put effort into them and do them, and your life will change. If you want to support the channel, you can go to thunderwizard.com and subscribe at whatever level you want. Even if you subscribe at the bottom level, you'll get access to, again, I need to go find out how many hundreds of hours of video there is on there, teaching you mastery of shamanism from A to Z. And then we have the Manifestation Mastery course, where I go into depth teaching you what I'm doing here, exactly how to manifest your perfect life. And then we have the union of masculine and feminine. We have the lockdown package, which is coming to an end very soon. And I recommend that you take advantage of it now, because when it's gone, it's going to be gone forever. And you'll have to buy everything individually. The lockdown package is I've taken every single thing that I've put into a paid course or service, except for a few things like books and DVDs and things like that, which I don't control the money over. Everything else I put into that, and you save something like $2,000. So I'd recommend that. Courses.thunderwizard.com, all of my books and DVDs. Subscribe and hit the bell button, and you will achieve enlightenment. All right, let's take a look at any questions that are here. Raymond Avich, question. Can you find out what Hindu god you have in one of your houses by checking out what planet you have in that house? Yes. There is a way to do that, but it's complicated. This is why you go to an astrologer. So if you were to get a Vedic astrology reading from me, I can teach you, I can figure out for you which God is best for you based on that planet. So what you're talking about, in case anybody doesn't know, first off, in the lockdown package, I teach my form of Vedic astrology, and you can learn one of the ways to determine that if you take that course, which is in the lockdown package. But if you want a reading from me, or even We've got Vincent. He's one of my astrologers. Vincent.thunderwizard.com. You can go get a reading from him. Or you can just get a reading from me or any of my other astrologers. And that is at www.astrology.thunderwizard.com. Okay, so in order to figure that out, I'd have to look at your chart, and what you can do is you can find out based on your moon sign. First you have to determine which planet is the one that you want to do a ritual to, and for what reason. And once you've determined that, then there's a way to determine which deity is best associated for you, and that's based on your moon sign. So where your moon is sitting, you go to the 1st, 5th, and the 9th houses from your moon, and the syllables that are associated with the nakshatras of those houses tell you what the best deities are for you. So in other words, somebody can be doing a Mars mantra, but your Mars deity might be different from mine. And that'll be based on where my moon is. So I have to look at my moon, and I already know the syllables for my moon. And so any deity for any planet, I know the syllables. I just look for instance, like if I want to work with Jupiter, the best Jupiter planet for me is, the best Jupiter deity for me is Indra. And that's because based on where my moon is, the E sound vibrates well with my moon. If I want to work with Mars, for instance, a good Mars deity for me would be Anjaneya, because of the A syllable. So to answer your question, yes. Raymond, can you figure that out? Probably not. I've tried to explain to some people exactly how I do it, and for some it's just been too complicated. I think some people have gotten it. But I've decided to stop trying to teach that to people. If somebody really wants to learn, they got to prove to me that they're ready to learn it. Otherwise, it just takes a lot of time for me to try and spell it out. So I hope I answered your question. Can you find out what Hindu god you have in one of your houses by checking out what planet you have in that house? But there's also, Raymond, if you're not skilled in Vedic astrology, you may not know what planet is working best for you. I mean, even I've run into it. There's somebody I work with on a regular basis who, based on looking at their chart, I thought that they needed to be working with Saturn. And the more that we worked with Saturn, the more that their life slowed down and got more challenging, which is, Saturn is limitation. So I said, well, heck, if that's not working, let's do the opposite of that. So the opposite of that in his chart was Venus. When he started working with Venus, everything turned around. And he started actually, accomplishing more. He was more disciplined. He was more, which is totally the opposite of Venus. Venus isn't about discipline. Venus is about having fun. So I don't recommend you trying to figure it out. I recommend you getting help from somebody who knows what they're doing. And I know because I was there, and I bounced around, and I worshipped a bunch of different deities and did a bunch of different mantras because I didn't know. And like for instance, for me, Kali is not a good deity for me to work with, again, based on my chart for a bunch of reasons. And I remember when I was doing Kali mantras, and I was living in Idaho, and I was going up and spending, weeks at a time up in the mountains, up in the forest. And everywhere I went, a forest fire would start. I'd go up and I'd find a camp spot, and I'm thinking I'm close, and I'd start chanting to Kali, and then a fire would erupt. So I'd get in my car and I'd drive to the other side of the state to another mountain range, and I'd get up in that mountain and I'd start chanting to Kali, and another forest fire. And no matter where I went, forest fires kept on coming up. I kept on doing it because I was committed, because when I commit to something, I want to follow it through. And I was married at the time, but everywhere I went, I smelled smoke. Just everywhere I went. And I asked her, I said, can you, and I breathed out my nose and I said, can you tell me what you smell? And I breathed out my nose and she said, smoke. So I don't know what the hell was going on, but Kali doesn't work for me. So it's like, trying to figure out what God and what mantra you should be doing is like going into the pharmacy and just sort of grabbing medications off the shelf. You don't really know what you're getting yourself into, and you can really hurt yourself. So I don't recommend that you do that on your own. All right, let's see what else. Nope, I don't see. I don't see anything. Yes, yes, yes. I don't know why you can't see anything. That doesn't make any sense because I know I'm looking at it right now. I know that everything is working fine. So whatever the problem is, it's unfortunately on your end. I don't see any other questions here. So let me go a little bit deeper on this subject. So you have the self that you've created. And you create a self in order to fit in with the world. And that self is created in infancy. When you're an infant, starting from the moment that you're born. There's evidence that from the age of 5 days old, infants are already learning how to manipulate parents in order to give them attention. That's not a bad thing. Babies have to do that in order to survive. But they're learning energetically. They're looking up at mom and dad, and they're learning very quickly what it's going to take for mom and dad to love them. Now, this all works really well if mom and dad are connected with themselves and if mom and dad are conscious people. Because what mom and dad will do is they will reflect back to the child a neutral, loving, supportive reflection, which will allow the child to literally see who they are. But that's, very rare to have somebody be that conscious. So there is a scale, starting from really screwed up, the kind of parents that create serial killers, and I'm not kidding, and the kind of parents that create saints. There's a scale. Now the question that you have to answer is, do you want to be forced into the mold that you were trained into being? And that is going to have a connection with you wanting to please other people. If you're in a relationship that's destructive, what you're doing is you're replaying wanting to get mommy and daddy's love if mommy and daddy were not conscious and loving. So you recreate that. People, for the most part, unless they're conscious, they choose careers and they choose relationships based on their desire to fit in and to be loved and being accepted. And even though I can say that, it sounds really cavalier because most people think, oh yeah, I know who I am, I know what I want. And the truth is they don't. And they will fight to hold on to their false ego, their false identity. We all do it. And we do it because we think that's what's going to help us to survive. People who are trapped in religions, like, born again Christianity, for example, people who are trapped in that religion, they're going to talk about pleasing God and following God's love and following Jesus' example. But they're not doing that because of any connection to their soul. They're doing that because they want to fit into society, because that's what Christian religion is all about. It's a way of programming the masses, to bow to the Almighty, to carry their cross. What a ridiculous thing! To carry your cross means to carry the tool for your torture and murder. So carrying your cross is not a good thing. denying yourself. None of these things are good. None of these things are healthy. So, but people think that they're doing the right thing. They think they're following the true God. They think they're being spiritual, but they're actually fighting against their own soul. And so this is the challenge, is to find that, to be able to look through that. And the one thing I was thinking about is that it's not going to come from being a good person. It's not going to come from following all the rules, or, like the Buddha figured out. The Buddha figured out that if you tighten a string, on a bow, if you tighten the string too tight on a bow, it'll snap. And if you don't tighten it enough, then it'll be too loose and you won't be able to shoot the arrow, which means your intention. So the bow has to be tightened just enough in the middle so that it'll snap back and you can launch your arrow, but not so tight that it will snap. And this really is about finding, the path of the middle way is really about this. It's finding your true essence. When you can find that, then you can have everything. I believe that that's where the magic is. The magic in having everything that you want, having all of the money, having all of the success, having all of the happiness, having all the love, having all of the health, having all of the freedom, is directly associated with how close you are to your soul. Now, in order to get there, you must be ruthlessly honest. And this is the sticking point. So in case you haven't watched it, I recommend everybody go watch my videos on critical thinking. Go watch my videos on critical thinking. Critical thinking is, even people who think they're critical thinkers aren't critical thinkers. Critical thinking is about, first and foremost, knowing yourself. Because in order to be able to determine whether something somebody is telling you is true or false, you must first be ruthlessly honest with yourself, which means that you cannot be operating on emotional agendas. People who stick with religion and blindly follow religion. Well, the Bible says this, so I believe it. Those are people who have strong emotional attachments to that belief system. And the moment that you try and analyze that and show them the flaws in it, they get very upset and angry and frightened. So it means that they have an emotional agenda which they believe is connected to their survival. So this is why my ancestors said those who die in battle go to Valhalla. It means those who are willing to die to their own attachments, to their own emotional agendas, to their own illusions of survival, these people achieve Valhalla. So in critical thinking, the first thing that you must do is accept that everybody, including you, has an emotional agenda all the time. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Nobody is ever completely neutral. The best that anybody can say at any given time is, for instance, if somebody were to accuse me of being whatever it was, I don't know, pick it. If somebody were to accuse me of being something, I would say, well, as far as I can tell, I'm not aware of that. If what you're saying is true, I'm not conscious of it. That's the most truthful thing anybody can say. Because when you are being motivated by your emotional agendas, you can't tell if it's true or not. When you have an emotional agenda, it means that you believe that your life is dependent upon whatever it is. And so anybody that tries to get between you and that emotional agenda, you will try and destroy them or get rid of them or escape them. So the first thing you have to do is be willing to look at yourself and be honest about what your true motivations are and why you do what you do. I talk a lot about this on my other channel. But this has everything to do with self-realization, self-awareness. Because if you're not willing to look at, the reason why I've been doing that, like if I think about, again, if I allow myself to go into the mindset of wanting to be a famous actor, if I really get honest with myself, um, it's not because I'm desperate to go do that work. It's not because I'm doing the work just for the enjoyment of it. Because the truth is that got old pretty quick. Um, I was doing it because I wanted the money. I thought if I could make a ton of money and be famous, then I could look down at my father and I could prove to him that I was, really was important to me. I wanted to prove to my dad that I was important and that my artistic um, passions were important, and I was going to prove it to him by becoming really famous and rich, so that I could, snub my nose at him and see, look at how famous I am. It wasn't because of just the love. Now, don't get me wrong. I did have an honest love for the work, and later in life, when I was in Idaho, I did theater just for the sake of doing theater. Because I loved it and I enjoyed it. So same way now, like if I play music now, I do it just because it's fun. I don't do it because I want to, make CDs and become a famous musician. I just do it because it's fun for me. Although I know that if I wanted to do that, I could make that level quality of music. It's just not my thing anymore. So you have to be willing to take a look at yourself and be willing to be honest about your motivations, about why you do anything. And again, it sounds really cavalier. It sounds really simple, and it is very simple. But the truth is that most people just don't have that ability to be that aware. Because to have that level of awareness feels like it's killing you. The more attached that you are, the more false ego you have based on that false personality you created in infancy, the more attachment you have to that, the more painful it's going to be to let that go. So let's look at that again. The ego that you have, the self that you have, the identity that you carry with you is an identity that you created starting at birth. And it was for one purpose only, and that was to survive. And the more, the further away you are from your soul as you're growing up, creating this identity, the more painful and challenging it's going to be able to operate from your true self. But this is the whole reason we're here, is to get rid of those layers and get to the authentic self. And as Tatwale Baba says, when you get to the authentic self, that's where you find the happiness and the bliss. And you realize there isn't anything else besides that. Now, I haven't reached the state of Tatwale Baba because I still have desires associated with things like surfing. I still have a strong desire for that. That's what my whole life is about. Even now, I'm going to be 57 in like 10 days or something. Yeah, like 10 or 12 days. I'm gonna turn 57, and it's getting. I have to put a lot of effort into staying healthy and strong, because if I don't, I won't have the physical ability to go out there and do that sport. So, my time is limited on achieving that desire. I've got a short window that I have left. So I'm not where Tatwale Baba is, where he just, he lived in a cave and he didn't need anything except, a cane and his, his diaper or whatever they wear, the loincloth. That's all he needed, and his begging bowl. And because he had himself, he didn't need anything else. And he would go into meditation and just experience the divine bliss of himself. And so he knows what's true and what's real and what happiness is all about. So maybe in the next lifetime I'll get to that place. According to one astrological reading, I have one more lifetime after this one. But however many lifetimes it takes for us to finally achieve all of our desires, the desires of our soul, then that's all that enlightenment is. And I should say that's what moksha is. Enlightenment. Enlightenment, let me give you my definition of enlightenment. Enlightenment is not being free from pain. It's not being free from difficulty or challenges. Enlightenment is having access, conscious access, to all of your thoughts and feelings. A lot of people ask me the question, how can I get over this feeling? How can I get over fear? How can I get over anxiety? How can I get over hate, sadness? And I always respond the same way, which is, who said you had to get over it? You don't have to get over it. Have it. Whatever the feeling is. Resentment, anger, pain, sadness, happiness, joy, empathy, inspiration. Whatever the feeling is, positive or negative, just have it. But what you need to then know what is the constructive action to take. So somebody who is enlightened is somebody who has all of his or her thoughts and feelings, which might mean murderously rageful. And they accept themselves. They don't deny that feeling. They don't push it away, but they don't have to act on any impulse. They act on what is the constructive action. And that is the fine line. You have to know the difference between that and denial, that and lying, being disingenuous. But the truth is, people are only disingenuous if they have an ulterior motive. If you have all kinds of messed up feelings flying around, and you're acting on what you know to be a constructive thing, not what you feel. Listen to the words I'm saying. You don't have to feel that this is, the right thing to do. You just have to know, if I act like this, this gives that result. And in this case, the kind thing to do, or the loving or constructive thing to do, is to act like this, even though what I want to do is this. That's enlightenment. And I always look for that. Like if I'm dating somebody and they can look me in the face and say, I'm really angry at you. If they can do that, I will pull out my ring and get on my knees and say, will you marry me? Reason is because if they're able to verbalize their feelings while taking the constructive action of communicating with me and trying to meet me halfway, then I know that when things are really bad, that person will be there for me. So it's not when people are feeling loving toward you. That's easy. Loving somebody when it's easy, when it feels good, that's cheap. It's being loving towards somebody even when you don't feel like it. And again, that's different from being in denial, because I could say that same phrase and somebody who is codependent, who lives for other people, will deny themselves and push themselves down and allow somebody who doesn't love them and is abusive and say, well, no, I'm taking the loving action, even though I want to do this. So again, it's so hard. You have to have such self-awareness, and you have to be ruthless with yourself. Christy D asks a question. She says, can you tell me about Freya's field? I feel like I've been there in childbirth. Also, how do I develop strength to overcome obstacles to my soul desire? So I don't know a lot about Freya's field. If you're talking about what I think you're talking about, my understanding, according to the mythology, is that there's Valhalla, and then there's Freya, Folkvang, I think it's called. And so Freya goes over. The Valkyries go over the battlefield and they scoop up the soldiers that have died in battle, and I think half go to, if I remember correctly, half go to Odin in Valhalla and the other half go to Freya. My belief, this is the way I look at it, that there's different kinds of, quote, angels. When I was a Christian, there were guardian angels, right? And if you're, even if you're into New Age, whatever, there's Archangel Michael, who fights against negativity and all that kind of stuff. Of course, I don't buy into that spiritual path, but there's this belief that there's like guardian angels and warrior angels and all that. So I think the same is true. Here's how I look at it. After making it through being different kinds of animals and other beings, we have the opportunity to become the lower self of a human. So nature spirits become lower selves of humans, and when humans die, their lower self goes out. And If the person dies in awareness, that lower self will go out and become a nature spirit. If the person dies in unconsciousness, that lower self goes out and is a ghost. It's not their souls. When you see ghosts flying around, those aren't people's souls. Those are their conscious imprint that their lower self has on it. When that fades away, because ghosts don't last very long, you don't find out. I mean, you don't hear about ghosts that are 1,000 years old. They're usually a few hundred years old at most, and then they fade away. They fade away because they turn back to their original essence of nature spirits. And so after we've gone through that and we've been a nature spirit and a lower self, then when that lower self achieves a level of awareness, it gets to become a soul. And so the soul comes into the body, and then after that, we get to be higher selves. So the way I look at it, because we have three selves, we have the lower self, middle self, which is the soul, and then the higher self. The way I look at it is that when people achieve their highest desires and they die to their false ego completely, which means they fulfill all of the desires of their soul, then I believe they get a choice to become, either a warrior spirit for Odin, going out and fighting, negativity, or they become like a guardian angel spirit. And those are the Disir. Those are like the ancestors that come to you. And in just about every tradition, you'll find that people's ancestors come back and teach them. That people's ancestors watch over them. And so that's what I think those are. So that's my thought, totally my opinion. I can't back it up on anything other than that, so I'm totally happy to be wrong about that. How do I develop strength to overcome obstacles to my soul desire? You don't have to develop strength. So this is a very common question. And the way that question is asked, it's asked in many different ways, but it's always the same. And here's another version of that question, which is, oh, I want to live my soul desire. I just have to make enough money so that then I can go do it. I have to get this in order. When I get this in order, then I'll go live my soul desire. But that's not how the soul desire works. Soul desire works, you go do it when you have nothing. You go, if your soul desire is to run a restaurant, then you don't wait around to earn the money to go, you just go do it. You start cooking in your kitchen, and then you get a cart and you go out on the street, and then you beg and borrow and steal, and then you put down the down payment that you don't have on credit for a restaurant. I'm not saying that's how it has to happen. You're willing to do that. The obstacles are going to come. So what you're asking me to do is you want me to make you feel better. You don't want to feel, in this case, strength. You don't want to feel the vulnerability. But they wouldn't be obstacles if they didn't make you feel vulnerable. So you don't develop strength to overcome your obstacles. You just choose to do your soul desire no matter what. If you want to do it, you can do it this way. Once you determine what your soul desire is, and the way that you do that is when the desire hits you and you go into a state of joy. That's your soul saying, yeah, that's what I want to do. That state of joy will not last forever. If you have karmic or childhood psychological obstacles to that, then almost immediately you're going to go down, you're going to be on this big high of inspiration, and then you're automatically going to go into, sorry, I'm distracted here, but you're going to go immediately into, a state of disillusionment, depending on how much stuff you have going on. So what you want me to do is you want me to make it easier for you, and I can't do that. So one of the things you can do is you make the decision and you do a vow. I made the decision when I was in California. I didn't have the means to do it, but I made the decision that I was going to come here to Australia, and I was going to live in a beach house on the beach, and I was going to surf. I didn't know how I was going to be able to afford it. I didn't know how I was going to make it happen. I just did it. My lease was running out. I let it run out. I sold everything that I had, truth is I gave away almost everything that I had. Forgot about that. I gave away almost everything that I had, and I got on a plane with 2 suitcases and a couple of surfboards. And I had no idea how I was going to survive or what was going to happen. And look where I am. Now I'm here in, I would say, the best place in the world for me, because in this area, we don't have COVID. There's other places in Australia, but they've blocked off the borders. So I'm in like the best place in the world. We can walk around and we can go to restaurants, and there's, it's not an issue here. And if I hadn't have done that, I'd be back in Los Angeles, trapped in my house, not being able to go outside for, 9 months now. It's been going on for 9 months. It'd be horrible. So you don't develop strength to overcome the obstacles. You just go do what you want, even if it kills you. You die in battle. It will kill you. Okay, so I hope I've made that clear. James Peck asked the question, and every time you cuss, by the way, YouTube will block your question. So let me unblock it here. So yeah, don't just, ask the question, and don't write nasty stuff here. Question, what is the causal body? Do I ever teach about the causal body? So James Peck, how much of my stuff do you watch? How much of my videos? How many of my books have you read? When have I ever talked about the causal body? I don't talk about it. I mean, I could go look it up, just like you. I could go Google it, but I don't teach about that. The real question is, why are you asking? I'm much more interested in why you're asking, because then I'm going to find out emotionally what's going on. The reason you want to know why? I want to know why people ask questions. If it's not clear to me, if I answer somebody's question, it's clear to me. It's clear to me what they want. When somebody asks a question like, what is the causal body? What you're not telling me is why you want to know, which is what I really want to help you with. I want to know what your emotional need is. That's what I want to fix for you. That's why I get so frustrated with people who ask questions and I give them a really hard time about it. It's because I'm having an experience that they're not connected emotionally to what they're asking and why they're asking it. And so they get wrapped up in a bunch of intellectualization. I'm not saying that you're super intellectual on this. I just don't know why you're asking that, because there's a reason why. You read that, you saw that word somewhere, and somebody said something about the causal body, or if you don't do this, the causal body will do that for you, and you have an emotional need to figure it out. I would much rather know why you want to figure it out, and then I can help you even better. All right, no more questions. So, yep. Lockdown.thunderwizard.com. Thunderwizard.com. So my income is starting to go down. So if you want to see me on the channel more, then the way that you can support me is to go on to thunderwizard.com and subscribe at any level you want. And any level of subscription on that website will give you access to hundreds of hours of in-depth videos. I go into more depth in those videos than I do here. So if you want to keep me from having to go and find some other job somewhere, do me a favor and subscribe at whatever level you want. Raymond Avich question, does following your soul desire always take a lot of work? I don't know. It doesn't matter. You have to treat it like a battle. So imagine you have to go take that hill, and the enemy is on that hill, and you have to go take it from them. Now, you're a soldier, which means that you're prepared to die for what you're doing. You don't go to the commanding officer and say, I'll take that hill if there's not too much danger involved. I mean, are those guys up there, are they trying to kill me too? Or am I just trying to kill them? Because if they're trying to kill me, I'd prefer to just stay right here. So when it comes to your soul desire is a commandment. Not from God, but from you. So whether it's hard or not, again, why ask that question? If it's hard, are you not going to do it? If you don't follow your soul desire, you might end up sick, miserable, poor, in pain, sad. Here's the thing. There's two kinds of pain that you want to experience. Now, ideally, you don't go through any pain. I don't wish any pain on anybody. But you have to determine what kind of pain you're going to be dealing with. And I'll give you an example. There's somebody that I know, who's in somebody that I know, who is involved in a three-way romance. And this woman lives with a woman and her husband. And the woman, which is not my friend, but her, whatever, the wife, we'll just call it, there's the woman and then the wife and the husband. So the wife doesn't have sex with her husband anymore. So the husband is having sex with the woman. So this woman has a close personal connection with both of them. So there's this triangle going on. Now she hates it. She wants to leave, but she can't bring herself to leave because she can't tolerate making the husband upset. And he gets very upset every time she starts to talk about leaving that sexual connection. And so in order to avoid that, she just goes along with it. Now, there's all kinds of other psychological and unconscious things that are going on with her, obviously, but and then, she tells us about it every now and then. It's been going on for years. And every now and then she talks about it. And when she gets honest, she gets really emotional and says, I feel like such a screw up and such a loser and I'm so weak and all that. And so one of the last times this came up, I asked her, I said, so you know what you want to do? You want to tell him no and you want to move out of that house? She says, yeah. And I said, and you don't want to do that because it's too painful. You don't want to have to go through all of the challenge and the difficulty of having to deal with him being really angry at you and all that. She says, yeah, I just don't want to deal with it. And I said, so it's really painful. She starts crying. She says, yeah, it's really painful. And I said, so if you stay, it's going to be painful, right? She says, yeah. I said, so that's not going away. You already know that pain. But if you leave, it's also going to be painful. She said, yeah, it'll be very painful. And I said, but one pain is going to create more pain and bring more misery for you. The other pain will bring you freedom. So since you're going to be in pain no matter what you do, why not take the action that will bring the pain that will bring you freedom? So in terms of does your soul desire always take a lot of work? Who cares? If you don't follow your soul desire, you're going to be miserable and in pain. So if going after your soul desire is going to be challenging, and that's like the command, if you don't do that, you're just building up more lifetimes. And here's the thing. Every time that you don't go after your soul desire in a particular lifetime, the next lifetime becomes twice as difficult. And then if that difficulty prevents you from going after it, then the third time is 10 times as difficult. And then you miss that one. And then the one after that is 100 times as difficult. So it's going to be painful no matter what. Eventually what will happen is that the pain will be so great that you'll have no choice and you'll go ahead and do what your soul wants you to do. So if you want to avoid the hard work, do it now. As soon as you know what it is you want to do, just go do it and deal with whatever the pain is. Because it's going to be whatever it is. And in the end result, you'll be happy. I make fun of Arnold, right? And I do my Arnold accent there. Come on, what's wrong with you? But I don't know him personally. I don't know how healthy of a person he is emotionally or psychologically. I don't know him. But in terms of him following his soul desire, I have no doubt that he pulled it off. Because he talks about it. As soon as he saw some American or maybe, yeah, I don't know who it was. He saw some bodybuilder in a movie when he was in the 50s when he was a kid, and he said, "I want to do that." And everybody thought he was crazy, and his parents said, "No, you're supposed to be a policeman like your dad." And it's, post World War II Austria, and he's really poor and all that. And he just decided he was going to go do it, and he started training, and everybody made fun of him because in the 50s, if you trained in bodybuilding, you were kind of a freak, and maybe you were just weird. There was just something wrong about you. It wasn't like today, where if you go to the gym and lift weights like everybody does now. It was different back then. And he says that when I would go to the gym, every rep, no matter how painful it was, it would make me happy. Like he would see other people in the gym who would have this look on their face because they were working so hard, lifting really heavy weights. And he would say, "I don't understand that. Every rep that I complete, I'm one rep closer to becoming Mr. Olympia." So the whole idea of trying to avoid hard work is a waste of time. Just accept that there's going to be some pain and some work. For some people, it's going to be easier than others. I don't know if it's going to be a hard work for you or not. Just assume that it will be and just do it. No matter what, be willing to die. I've done that. I mean, I've numerous times in my life before I even understood this, when I got out of my marriage, and I spent my life then, I spent 10 years living for somebody else. So much so that she talked me out of having a job, talked me out of having a business. She talked me into being a house husband. And I hated it. I was miserable. And finally, things fell apart. I won't get into all that, but things finally fell apart. And then here I was out on my ass with no money, because I signed a prenup and I signed a quitclaim on the house. So she literally could just decide when she was done with me and kick me out. And there was nothing I could say. I mean, I wouldn't have fought about it anyway, but that's what ended up happening. I ended up on the street with nothing. And I made my way up to northern Idaho, and I was living in a cabin in the middle of the woods. And I was making $500 a month on book sales and not knowing how I was going to survive. And I just went after everything. And then when I was there, I decided I was going to move back to California and live in the mountains there and surf, which was quite a task in and of itself. And I did, and I just got up and I took what little money I had in credit cards and I put a deposit on a cabin. I didn't even know, I just showed up sight unseen. And I could have ended up homeless at any point along that time. I had no family, I had no friends, I had nothing. And that is an example of dying in battle. It would have been much easier for me to stay in that marriage and to try and meet all of her ever increasing demands, because her demands on me were getting more and more, intense. And she was making it harder and harder for me to be self-sufficient. And if I was going off of my, wanting to avoid how challenging it is to do what I want, I'd still be there and I'd probably be in a wheelchair because I'd be in so much pain. So who cares how hard it is? Just do it. Come on! What's wrong with you? E.V. Marie North Star question. I am deeply attached with the goddess Hela. Hela. Her name is Hela. Hell is the place. Hela is her name. Hela. How can I have benefit of her energy in my soul journey? I mean, if you connect with any of the gods, they're going to benefit your soul journey. But you already know the whole breath, right? Just do that. Do the whole breath. That's the most valuable gift I can give you. That came to me directly from her. Nobody else teaches that. I'm the only person that, to my knowledge, teaches that meditation. And she gave it to me. And she told me in her own way that was the ancient practice of our Paleolithic ancestors 30,000 years ago in Europe, before people had white skin. They were doing that. because she is the oldest of the goddesses in Europe. So that's the best gift I can give you. James Peck. That's not a question. Okay. It's not a question either. Okay, that's it for me. All right, I've been on for a while. Again, lockdown.thunderwizard.com. I'm telling you, you're going to kick yourself if you don't take advantage of that while you can. Thunderwizard.com. If you want to keep me on the air doing this, please go and subscribe and support the channel. Courses.thunderwizard.com if you want to see all the books and the DVDs. And if you want to achieve instant enlightenment, then you must subscribe and hit the bell button. All right, that's it for me. I will see you guys all very soon. Thank you for taking time out to come and talk to me. I'll talk to you later.